Hey guys, I asked you this question. How many ways can you solve this quadratic equation? It's kind of like potatoes. How many ways can you cook a potato? You can bake it, boil it, slice it, grill it, fry it. I don't know. Ceviche it. You can do a lot of things to it. So let's do the same thing with this one. The easiest one, but doesn't always work, is factoring. So let's try factoring. 0 equals x squared plus 2x plus 1. And this is where I'm going to use my Xbox method of factoring. I have A, B, and C, descending order. A times C, so that would be a 1 times 1 is 1, and my B value is 2 there. Remember, your A, B's, and C's are always numbers, integers. They are never with variables. They're in front of the variables. So I need two numbers that will multiply to equal 1, but they also need to, those same two numbers need to add to be positive 2. You can always list out the factors, right, of 1. 1 times 1, so that's all we got. It's splitting this term, so that means I have to add an x here. So when I put it into the box, it always goes into the bottom left, and it always goes into the top right. Okay, so now let us go ahead and finish this box. So the first term always goes in the top left, and the last term always goes in the bottom right. And then here we're just going to take out the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor in this direction is an x. In this direction, it's a positive 1. What do these have in common? They have an x, and what do they have in common here is a plus 1. Okay, once you have two binomials set equal to 0, we can now split them and set it equal to 0. This is called the zero product rule. And essentially doing the same problem twice. So you have x equals negative 1, and same thing over here, x equals negative 1. Okay, so we just solved it, x equals negative 1, by using the method of factoring. Well, what else could we use? We can do this by graphing. Well, it looks like this one is already in something called standard form. And we did that above, where it has the A, B's, and C's. Let's just copy that. Okay, for graphing, we're going to try to find the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry has a formula. And it helps us when we're trying to find this order pair called the vertex. So x equals negative b over 2a. That minus sign must be there in the formula. The b value is 2. I'm showing that by the parentheses. And my a value is 1 by the parentheses. So you're going to get 2 divided by 2. And essentially you're going to get x equals negative 1. Okay, why is that important to us? So that when we create a table of values here, you want to pick a total of 5 points for quadratics. And you want to start in the middle. So how do you know which one is the middle? Well, this x equals negative 1 is going to go right here, always. So these are our x values. This will be my equation. You can put it into function notation to be super fancy, or you could put a y there. It's up to you. Okay, so what we need to do is pick some numbers to the left of -2. So -2, -3, and then you can also go up from here, 0 and 1. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to put in these x column here for every x value. And in function notation, you don't have to worry about that if that's something that's confusing to you. You can just work on the right side of the equation. So -3 squared plus 2 times -3 plus 1. This will give me a 9 minus 6 plus 1. And that'll give us 3 plus 1 is 4. So my order pair is going to be -3, comma 4. Okay, let's put in a -2 now for every x value. You can see that by my parentheses. This is called a substitution. So we're going to get -2 times -2 is 4 minus 4 plus 1. So 4 minus 4 is 0. And we just have 1. So when I put in a -2 as my x value, my function notation or my answer is 1. The output is 1. Okay, here is our vertex. Let's write that, vertex. And I'll show you what a vertex is once we graph it. So -1 squared plus 2 times -1 plus 1. This will give me -1 squared, which is 1, minus 2 plus 1. So that's -1 plus 1, which is 0. -1, comma 0. If you're getting stuck on the math operations, use a calculator. Super helpful. All right, let's put in 0 now. You see that the yellow represents my x value. So 0 squared is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. And 0 plus 1 is 1. So 0, comma 1. And then we just put in a 1. Last one. 1 squared is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. 1, comma 4. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to draw a coordinate plane. Okay, so I hope you noticed some, whoops, let's go back. Put some tick marks on here. Generally evenly spaced. Okay, so -3, left 3, up 4. And it's kind of weird, but I'm going to graph this one over here. 1, 4. And I'm color coding them. Hopefully you can see that. It's the same color here. Let's do red here. Between these two and these two. So left 2, up 1. And 0 on the x-axis and 1 on the y. So that would be here. Okay, then we said this one, 0, -1, left 1, stay. Okay, and here in green is my parabola. Now I'm going to move my parabola because it should be going through, whoops, it should be going through the x-axis. Something like that. And the last thing I want to point out is that axis of symmetry, x equals -1, this is the dotted line. I call it a dotted line because it just means you can fold that parabola nice in half. So I want to connect this. The solutions in the previous factoring were x equals -1. And where it crosses the x-axis is also -1. Okay? So I got factoring, I got graphing. Let's try this now with a different method. Let's try this one with something called completing the square. Completing the square. So I have, I'm going to change it around, just totally okay in math. And this is actually the same method I'm going to put in here called square root method. Square root. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of fancy. I'm just going to factor. Well, if you subtract 1, this is the square root method. It's kind of redundant, but you'll see. X squared plus 2x equals -1. We move the c value to the right side, and then we would use this formula in completing the square, CTS. And that was half of the b value divided by 2 squared. So if my b value is 2, so 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So we would add 1 to both sides. And why I said that was redundant is now you have 0, and then you have the same thing. But I wanted to prove to you you can use the completing the square or the square root method. Okay, let's go ahead and factor this one. So I have A, B, and C. A times C is 1. B value is 2. Well, you've already actually done this in that previous problem, right? And the numbers we got were 1, 1x, and 1x. Just splitting here. And x squared, and the 1 goes down here. And then if you factor this out, you'll get x, 1. We already did this, right? X and 1. But now I have 2 of those. And if you have 2 of those, we do something called a binomial squared or perfect square trinomial. Why is it a perfect square? Well, look below. It actually forms a square. And then from this method, all I have to do is take the square root of both sides. There's a 2 there. So this is gone, gone, gone. You're left with x plus 1 equals the square root of 0. And we talked about how you must have a plus or minus. You must. Well, what are 2 identical numbers that multiply to be 0? That's 0. So plus or minus 0. And then we subtract 1. So let me show you the subtracted 1. This goes on to the left side of the plus or minus. So you have x equals -1 plus or minus 0. And what that plus or minus is you basically can separate it here. You have x equals -1 plus 0, and x equals -1 minus 0. So you'll have x equals -1 and x equals -1. Look at that. That is the same 2 solutions that we got in factoring and in graphing right here. And then the last method you guys are going to use, which is this week's lesson. Get another color here. Is we're going to do something called the quadratic formula. That's a U. I'm struggling writing you guys. U. I like to write a tail with it, that's why. And Mrs. Kochi Perez sang the song for this week's lesson. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, now you're using the same a, b's, and c's. I don't know what I did. I'm just trying to steal this. Copy, and over here, paste, paste, hey, paste. Yeah, okay. Right, so my b value is 2. I'm just doing a substitution here. So wrote down the formula, identifying A, B, and C. A value is 1 and my C value is 1. All over my A value, which is 1. So now we just simplify this as -2 plus or minus 4. -4 times 1 in here is going to equal a -4. So you're going to get -2 plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 2. And this will give you -2 plus or minus 0 over 2. So you'll get -2 plus 0. Let's just do this. Let's separate this. -2 minus 0 is -2, and -2 divided by 2 is -1. And -2 plus 0 is -2, and -2 divided by 2 is -1. So here you have it again in red. The two solutions are x equals -1 and x equals -1. But remember, the reason why you only see this once is they call this a double real root, or a multiplicity, which we're going to talk about in second semester. Okay, so how many ways can you solve this? Well, kind of like all five ways. You guys know factoring, graphing, completing the square, and the new one will be quadratic formula. So we'll see you guys later. Bye.